Now, the data processing cycle often consists of the following steps. There is what is known as the data collection stage, preparation and input stage, processing, output and interpretation, and then storage. Well, let's look at what each of these stages entail. The data collection stage involves gathering data, okay, the raw facts which have to be entered to a computer system. And this data may be manually collected, for example, using a questionnaire. But data being collected on a questionnaire or some other means, it is not in a form that a computer can process. And so this leads us on to the next stage, the preparation and input stage. And this stage involves putting data into a form required for storage and subsequent processing by a computer. So for example, what was collected by a questionnaire may have to be entered in a storage device, in which case it would have been put in a magnetic form or digital form, which is processable by a computer. And this can be achieved, for example, by using a keyboard to type the data. Note that when data is being moved from a source document into a storage medium, for example, there could be errors which can be introduced in the process. For example, maybe certain items may be omitted, or certain digits may be transposed. And so it is important to always ensure accuracy when data is being transcribed. Now, there are two ways of doing this. First, using a mechanism that we call data verification. Another method is called data validation. Now, just speaking more about verification, this is the checking of data that is being input to a computer system to ensure that it is correct and the right data to be entered. For example, you can verify that there are no omissions or transpositions. An example of verification is where you cross-check that the data which you are entering into a computer, the data which you are taking from a source document, it matches with the data that you've actually entered. Another example is entering the same data twice and then let a computer program detect if there are any differences between what was entered and what is actually on the source document. Data validation. Here you need to notice that with the verification process, it's a human being that is involved in ensuring accuracy. But with validation, it is a computer program that works to ensure that input data is in the right format for processing. For example, a date, like today's date, may be required in the DD/MM/YY format, instead of starting with the month, the date, and then writing the year with 4 digits, as in 2017 for the year 2017. So what data validation does is it checks to ensure that before the processing by a computer can begin, the data is in the required format for processing. Now, there are many types of validation checks. For example, the format check that we're just talking about. There's also what is known as the range check. For example, many times when you are trying to enter your personal details using a web-based system, it may ask you to input the date between the digits 1 to 12, because we have 12 months. But suppose someone made a mistake and entered month 13. Well, that is out of range. Similarly, there's also what is known as a size check. For example, a password field may require that you enter not less than 6 characters. So that kind of a check ensures that you enter the correct number of characters. Now, in the exam for this course, you will be examined about the various types of validation checks, and here I've only given 2 examples of validation checks, but you can study the notes found on pages 29 and 30, and also in appendix 1 in the prescribed textbook. Just make sure you try to go through and you understand every type of validation check, because you are most likely to be examined on these things. And submit the solutions to activity 1.4 on page 30 in the portfolio for week 1 assignments. Now let's move on to another stage of the data processing cycle, and this involves processing. This is the 3rd stage. Now, processing, of course, is when data is manipulated according to programmed instructions so that it can produce the required information. And of course, this is achieved by a central processing unit or central processing units if it is a multi-processing system. And other types of systems can only handle one program at a time using one processor, which uses a time-sharing mechanism where it keeps switching between the different tasks until the processing load is done. Again, check in the prescribed textbook just to read more about the different types of processing mechanisms like multi-programming, multi-processing, time-sharing, and so on and so forth. Now, the next stage is the output stage, and during this stage the results of processing are simply displayed. This could be on a monitor, this could be in form of sound, and well, there are different types of output technologies which you shall learn later on in this course. Then you have storage. In storage, results of processing can be stored for future use, and later on these may have to be retrieved for other users or for further input to the computer for processing, and so the cycle continues on. Fine, so that is what we had to talk about in the data processing cycle. Basically, this process involves collecting data and then subjecting it to a manipulation process until the time when the information is output, stored, and later retrieved for use or for further processing. And you can read more on this topic in the Computer 1 Fundamental Concepts of Computing, and make sure you submit all your assignments on time, all the work, and each assignment, each exercise, it counts towards your final exam score. Thank you.